whatever that thing is that is playing it safe and you know it, but your core, your gut is telling you that you have something else, that you're made for more than whatever safe thing you're trying to do. The chance to breathe life, to be courageous to that person, that's the thing that matters most to me right now. And that feels really powerful.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I am very excited for this week's guest, Mandy McAllister. Mandy, how are you doing today?
I'm living the dream, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So for our listeners, Mandy, entrepreneur, multifamily investor, women's inspirational leader, eternal leader. I want to hear more about that. Dot connector, does a lot in multifamily training. Also the CEO of a mastermind group called GoBundance Women, which is a great mastermind group. So Mandy, thank you again for coming on. And I want to hear more about a lot of these different things you have on your website and other places. But first, tell me a little bit about your backstory and kind of what brought you to where you are today.
Sure. I am a farm kid from a small town in central Illinois who just wanted to do big things in life. So I followed a volleyball scholarship to a little school in Georgia and then moved to the big city the day after I finished undergrad. Kind of tried to chase the money, ended up trading on the floor of the Board of Trade and moved into medical device sales when I kind of saw that the floor was going to go away. And then after a bunch of years kind of chasing my tail, chasing commission checks, I chose not to go to medical school because I didn't want to be on call. And then I ended up on call in medical device sales. So hilarious irony in my life. So I started leaning on the cash flow that I was creating from investing in real estate, and a fourplex turned into a sixplex, turned into 18, turned into 38, turned into 53. And at a point in time, that cash flow starts to become more than it costs you to live your life. So you can really, once you figure out the money, you can really go do what feels great and what feels important to you. So I was able to lean on that financial independence in 2021 and left my W-2 of medical device sales and had this space in my life, that this mastermind that meant so much to me. They asked me to serve as leader and I had the room to do it. So that's how we got here.
That's awesome. 2021 is when I left my job as well to focus on real estate full time too. But I want to go back actually way to the beginning because I am from a farming and agricultural and very entrepreneurial community in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. So you said Illinois, I'm in Ohio. I came back, we live here, we're raising our family here. Tell me about the farm.
1,500 acres, soybeans and corn, couple head of cattle. Some of my family's favorite story is when I was 14, it was my job to feed the cows and one would lick my hands and I named him Buddy. And my dad told me it was Buddy in our freezer that year, so I couldn't eat meat for a while. But it's both my parents were entrepreneurs. Dad's a farmer, mom owned a gift manufacturing shop that, I helped her mostly. So I ended up traveling and being her sales force on the floor of Javits in New York and the World Trade Center in Dallas and wherever these trade shows would be. So, realizing that sales isn't something sleazy, it's a chance to help somebody solve a problem and connect in the process. So that's the business bug got me.
So first of all, it must be a farming type day because you can't make this stuff up. But this morning, one of our employees said they came into work and they're like, hey, I have to go back home because his brother had a calf that was out and running loose and he had to leave. He's like, so if I smell like, all day today, I apologize. So sorry for the total distraction there. But I want to ask you about growing up in an entrepreneurial family because I grew up in a similar way. My dad was a business owner and entrepreneur with uncles and cousins, and it was just, we were part of it. How did that shape you? How do you think that shaped you or impacted you in kind of your journey?
I always felt in control of where I was going. I felt like even though I was the smart kids, so like you kind of get pushed into being a doctor or a lawyer, and that's your only choice. I felt more in control. Like I remember being, fifth grade, making friendship bracelets and selling them for a quarter. Like there was always something to, grow a big business and live a bigger life through business that hit me. So I made scrunchies for local cheer squads and volleyball teams that wanted to match. Whatever that need was for a person like me when I was a kid, I tried to solve it.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk about, you have this concept called life by design, and I want to talk about that a little bit. So you said in your story, and you went through it pretty quick, and honestly, real estate and business podcast, but I love talking about like just the deeper, bigger topics. And we don't get into, we can if you'd like, but we don't need to get into the tactics of real estate and how you got there. Feel free to go there. But really, this concept of 2021, you left your sales role because you were able to get there from a financial perspective. What came next? And even maybe if it's before that, life by design, when did that
Mhm.
concept or idea start?
Yeah, I love this approach to a podcast because I think 80% of whatever you're going to try to do, it's all headspace. It's
Yep.
all, psychology. It's the 20% or less even that's the mechanics. Um, you know, I think an example that I kind of lived out from early on was I'm 5'9", which is not terribly tall. I ripped my ACL in high school, but I was only going Division 1. I had this like unshakable thing I was running after, and I reverse engineered this way to end up being a full scholarship athlete, Division 1, even though many would argue that should not have been the outcome, right? But there's always a path, and usually that path is you just got to be right with one person. You only need to get it right once in many cases. So when I, ended up on call in medical device sales, and I had just had my son, so it was getting real. You start having babies, and life feels a little different. And I had just won a president's club, so I was number 5 or something out of 500 reps in that medical device company. And the way that sales quotas tend to work is whatever you did last year, we're going to tack a bunch more
Of
onto
course.
it just to make the same money, right?
Yep.
Well, anyway, I wasn't making my quota the year after that really big year. And my boss said, just go find more patients. What does that mean? Like, I'm not going to commit like things that feel immoral just to hit a quota. And after a full-on panic attack in a parking garage at
Oh,
a
wow.
hospital, I realized, oh wait, I'm a newly divorced single mom who, I'm not solely dependent on this job. If he fires me for not following his terrible, you know, plans for me, then I'm not gonna live extravagantly, but we're going to live. I'm going to pay the mortgage because I have $3,500 cash flow coming in or something, whatever it was at that time, you know? So once I realized, oh, wait, I can design this. Once I lean into that cash flow, that will continue to happen every single year. When I go get a new building, that cash flow just adds on to what I've already got. I don't have to chase my tail and come up with a whole new thing to win a President's Club every single year because I'm compounding on what I've already built.
I want to ask about you breezed over it, but I think it's really important because I think it can be helpful for people when they're in different time periods and even in moments of life. You talked about, you just referenced the panic attack. And I think
Mm-hmm.
so many times we look at these, if I can say low moments or where we're just kind of feeling stuck in the moment, it feels like the worst thing ever. A lot of times, if you look back at those moments 5 years later, a lot of times those were moments that were shifts. But it takes someone time to be able to look back and think about it that way. So tell me
Mm-hmm.
about the. You don't need to get into details of that, but what was the shift that happened because of that? And do you agree or disagree with my kind of thought process there?
Totally agree. I mean, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. To have looked there was a post on Facebook today that, I prayed to be here 5 years ago, and I never would have imagined this in my wildest dreams being my life. The shift was I had hit so much pain. I had hit like it's a whole Tony Robbins thing, right? That once you hit enough pain, then, change becomes imminent. I was living this life that felt heavy. I, didn't like, I didn't like anything around me. I was blowing it all up, trying to construct something new. And what I realized was, oh wait, I have full control. And it is a little arduous when you realize that, oh, I have the ability to make these changes, but I have to be the one to make the changes. When you realize you have full responsibility over your entire life, it is both the most freeing and heavy thing to realize.
Yep.
So in that moment, I leaned into I made the commitment to myself, to my son, to the life I wanted to live, to the mogul that I am still becoming, that I could get there, but with my own hard work.
And I love that. I mean, full control and extreme ownership. And the opposite of that is not taking control. And that might feel easy. Like I don't have control and I'm just a victim of my circumstances. But man, that is not a way to live. Taking control, like if once you take control, you control things. Like you can own it. And if you don't get the result you want, okay, how am I going to get better? What am I going to change to get there?
Yeah, it's like Google Maps, right? Like if you make a wrong turn, Google Maps doesn't cuss you out. It just says recalculating. It helps you find the next right path and next right step in whatever your journey is. And that's what this whole entrepreneurship thing is. That's what life is to me, right? Like I picked this big North Star. When I get to help people who want to buy multifamily, we focus on the North Star. We figure out what that North Star thing is. And usually it's an amount of cash flow to buy yourself out of whatever thing feels heavy, and then you just take whatever next right step in that direction. You don't have to treat it like it's not rocket science. It's just figure out one thing and run straight at it.
Yeah, you don't have to have it all figured out right now, right? You can't. I
No.
mean, I love the phrase, by the way. I've used it too. You can't connect the dots forward from Steve Jobs. I want to go back to a couple
Mhm.
things, and I'll come back to that. So
Sure.
first, these like if people are having low moments, I just want to remind
Mhm.
people that like try to, as soon
Mhm.
as you can, try to step out of those moments. We were just the last 2 or 3 months we're closing a deal, and it was just a sprint, and I felt like I wasn't as engaged at home or other places as I'd like to be, and in the moment I was aware of it, but it didn't feel like I still wasn't, I didn't really appreciate it. But the second I got out of it, like once we closed the deal, there's still work to do, a lot of things to work on,
Mhm.
but just as like, okay, like I got some breathing room now, like I'm out of it. And I learned so much through that process. So I just would tell the
Mhm.
audience that if you're in that moment, try to recognize that for what it is as soon as you can.
Mhm. And ask yourself, what is this teaching me?
Yes. I love
Because
that.
if you
Yeah.
can realize what that is teaching you, it lands differently.
So then I want to shift to the other thing you're bringing up, which is you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to figure
Mhm.
out the right step. And a lot of times I think we try to figure out every single step and we worry and stress and we're trying to solve every single problem that will never exist. So just taking the next step and know that the next steps are also, and I want you to tell me more about this, the next steps are all lessons to guide you to where you ultimately go.
I think especially for high performing women, girls are taught to be perfect, boys are taught to be brave. There's an incredible TED talk on the subject. So little girls who were straight A students and they waited their turn and they raised their hand, the analysis paralysis that happens to women like me is really overwhelming. And there's a book that's kind of been all the rage through GoBundance women lately. I don't know if you've read it. It's called Psychology of Money. And
Yes.
this idea that it was so, mind shifting for me, this idea of I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be reasonable enough in whatever my decision is, and then get in and then be willing to tweak and reroute as necessary. You can drive completely across the United States in the dark, only seeing to your headlights 50 feet in front of you, right? Just trusting that you're going to be able to figure it out once you get to that new thing to figure out.
Yeah. And I think again, just to summarize that, start moving and like you don't have to see it all, and you're never
Mhm.
going to anticipate like with a map or with a driving analogy, you actually know where you're going, and
Mhm.
it's pretty exciting. The difference is with when you're taking new steps and decisions in kind of uncharted waters, if you will, you know the direction you're going, but you can't connect the dots for you don't know where you'll end up. But a lot of times we think about the issues that are going to happen, but we can't connect all the dots forward, and we can't realize you were talking about just, man, what how blessed you are. And 5 years ago you couldn't have prayed about where you are today. You couldn't see through the fog, and you also you just couldn't imagine it. So I think just moving forward, taking the next steps, making the decisions is so important.
It's what faith is, you know?
Awesome. Well, so the other thing you talk about is you're an eternal learner.
Hmm.
So what are the sources of that? Tell me more about what even that means. And like that's a long time commitment too.
Yeah. I mean, I was a kind of a school junkie for a while. I tried to get as many degrees as humanly possible. I ended up with a master's in economics. But this idea of, every person has something they can teach you. And my son doesn't think that my car plays music because there's always a podcast or an audiobook on. Lately, I've been all in on audiobooks because if you kind of think about the commitment to write a blog post or even here, this is what's on our minds right now. If you write a book, that's your life's work.
Yeah.
So if I can get into my head the life's work of Alex Hormozy, the life's work of Adam Smith, or whoever's book I'm reading, that really, I think, gives me perspective because I'm not the first person to invent any wheel. If
Right.
I'm trying to do something, there is a person who has done it before me, more than likely.
Eternal. How,
Yeah.
like, so what does that mean?
For a commitment for forever. I'm forever interested in learning, whatever it is that I can. I get so insatiably curious about things. I think that's one of my superpowers is that I'm insatiably curious.
Yeah.
You got to go. We learn it all the time when we talk to people who are ahead of us. Usually, it's because they got more focused, because they went an inch wide and a mile deep on the rabbit hole, and were so insatiably curious that they solved a problem in a bigger way.
Well, the other thing I like about what you said about being an eternal learner is that every person can teach you. You
Mhm.
jump to podcasts and Audible, but if you look at a lot of effective leaders in business and other places, what are they doing? They're asking curious questions and they're
Yeah.
listening and they're learning. That's why they are where they are. They might add a context or support the final decision, but they're just really curious. They're asking smart questions and they're just learning. So
Hmm.
I assume you have that same philosophy.
Absolutely. I mean, I've done it since I was a sales guy, right? The questions are what get you ahead. If you can ask better questions, you get better results.
So, life by design, I'm going to go back to that. So, tell me, like, des design a life for me, or tell me what that looks like. Like, what are you designing? And tell me about that from a business perspective, but other
Mhm.
areas of life as well. What does that look like?
That it's back to that realization of you get to pick, and then the responsibility that now I have to pick because I realize that I can pick, right? It's the whole matrix, red pill, blue pill, right? um I realized that I didn't want to be the person working 12-hour days. I didn't want to be on call. I didn't want to continue to be at the playground looking at my phone because I knew Dr. So and so needed my help to get his patient out of the hospital, right? So what I realized and what I started to build is that it becomes a math problem. How much money you need to live your life, you could do that math problem. And I actually made a little calculator. It's a free giveaway on my website. If you want the link, I'll make sure that your listeners get it. But basically, you can just figure out how much does it cost me to live my life. And once you've achieved that level of cash flow, you get to make many, many different decisions. So I wanted to be the mom who could volunteer at my kid's school. I wanted to, make it to every book fair to help him pick out a book. Those types of memories that you like, the memory range that we're in right now. My kid's 8.5. The I'm not going to get this back. The chance to join him on a field trip matters to me.
So, the math problem, I want to talk about the inputs to the math problem before we talk about how to get there. So, you have, what do we, this, oh, that
The
this is the
result,
formula. But how do we
yeah,
start it? So how do we
sure,
design it so we know what our cost is? And then let's talk about how we feed that, right?
love it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I realized that if I could get however much money coming in, I would feel different levels of security. Actually, I borrowed this idea of different levels of security from Tony Robbins, his Wealth Mastery event that he puts on in his book. I think it was Money Master the Game. But regardless, I kind of tweaked it to use real estate investing because that's my poison, right? I realized that once my mortgage and like Maslow's hierarchy of needs things were covered, then I could live by my moral compass in my day job and not do what my boss was telling me, that sort of thing. And then there was another road mark on the road for me to be able to get to, right? And then I have replaced my whatever it is that I spend every single month. with passive cash flow. Then there's that plus a buffer that would allow me to leave that W-2 if I wanted to. And that's what I hit in 2020 and decided to leave in 2021.
So
And now,
these
mhm,
levels are different for everybody. So like I
absolutely.
mean, they're similar. Like a mortgage is a mortgage for a lot of people, or rent, whatever it might be. That's like a typical level, or just the cost of food. Those are levels, but then it starts to change more and more as these levels go up. Is that right?
And it all matters to you. Like why you probably wouldn't give a flip about joining a jet membership. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, but that is a thing that mattered to me for this dream that I am still working towards. Right? Your mortgage is not my mortgage. So what
Right.
matters to you is your mortgage. So it's just a spreadsheet that I made that helps you figure out the things that you need to live that are your basic needs, your transportation, your healthcare, your mortgage. And then, the next step is that plus a little. And then there's what does it cost you to live your whole life? And there's a lot of free tools online that help you figure that out without a ton of headaches. And then once you've done that, let's dream big. Like, do you want a Range Rover? Do you want to belong to a jet membership? I don't know.
Right.
It matters to you.
So now we know what we want and the different
Mm-hmm.
levels of what we want. So how have you thought about feeding that, or like getting to those different levels?
So as a multifamily investor, on average, I see about 100 or to 250 a month in terms of cash flow from the bulk of my portfolio. I can look at what I got. I know each door brings me about 100 to 250.
Yep.
So if I can get to the number, how much cash flow I need, the little calculator tells me like a range of doors that I need to acquire to get me to that level of freedom. It's just something like I still keep it on my cork board that every single day I know that these are my needs in order to hit that next level.
I love that. I love that. So design your life. What do you want? And then there's different levels. And then, okay, what do I need to do to get those different levels, build that out, and then maybe put a timeline on those, and really just go check out the tool.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty straightforward. It's free. So if you want it, it's all yours.
Awesome. Well, I want to go back to just, if you think back to your story, because I appreciate the high level summary, because I like getting into the stuff we're talking about right now. But if you go back to that, what were some major, you talked about the panic attack, but some major just lessons that you
Mhm.
learned, maybe some mindset shifts that you had during your journey?
Probably the biggest one of late is that reasonable enough. I would not have jumped into these larger deals. I started to feel really safe with the fours and the sixes and the small multis.
Yep.
But going into the 53 unit, that was the next venture into the larger stuff. I really wanted agency debt. I really wanted non-recourse debt, and that partnership got me into it. Well, being reasonable enough, you're not going to know everything that's going to go wrong, and you know what? A lot of things will go wrong. You're signing up to solve problems if you're doing this. That was a really big epiphany for me, and it helps to do everything else moving forward. Because it's a muscle. Um, when I shortly before I was deciding to leave my W-2, I met a guy at my church who was doing a ton of single family, and he knew that I did multifamily, and he wanted to take down this huge deal, a 900 unit deal in the Chicagoland area. And
Okay.
he's like, well, help me do this. And I decided that I wouldn't do anything large until I had done something small with him. So uh, fast forward to I gave him the $110,000 to buy two single family homes. Many weeks later, he had yet to buy those homes and had cashed my check.
Oh,
So I identified as a very smart, very savvy investor. And because I misplaced trust in this person, who, why wouldn't I? We go to church together, our
right.
kids play together, that this is a person that I should trust. I am out $110,000 because I misplaced that trust. So now I trust but verify. I do background checks on anybody that I'm going to enter into partnership in any way on. And that has yielded some pretty like unexpected insights. So if I were to do a background check on you and saw that you were 10 miles an hour over the speed limit in 1997, then I say, hey, Phil, why are you driving so fast? But then I get to see how you deal with a hard conversation. And it's been manufactured such that I get to know how you deal with stress and hard questions rather than just asking superfluously how you deal.
And I think, going to church, like just you mentioned prayer earlier, and just from a faith perspective, a lot of times we naturally want to trust people on the surface, especially if that's where we meet people. So it's just so important. And to me, there's also, I learned this, there's different levels of trust. It's not just trusting their character, but trusting their competence as well, ensuring that they know what they're doing. Even if they're a good person, they may not know what they're doing. So I think being thorough with any partnership or any investment is extremely important.
Absolutely. And I've learned that subsequent to that having lost money too, the competence piece. I think that, every new joint venture that I have, I love partnership. That is how I've grown and that is how I continue to grow. But figuring out in the honeymoon phase exactly how the breakup will go is, we're paying a lot more attention to that than we were previously. One, just as this might be helpful to somebody out there, it's called a shotgun clause that I learned about that I'm putting in every new joint venture agreement that I do. That if we are in a partnership that's not going great and I want out and I'm willing to pay you $100,000, let's say, to get out of that deal and you reject it, then I get the opportunity to, if you won't buy me out for 100,000, then I get to buy you out for 100,000. So that keeps things feeling very fair and equitable.
By the way, the other thing I'm going to point out on, and I like the shotgun clause, but the other thing to point out on the $110,000 loss is
Mhm.
you lost the 110, but it could have been way worse if you didn't take the approach of just quote dating the business partner and learning what they do versus going in on the 900 units. So I think you saved a lot of money. You talk a lot about just with connecting the dots forward, driving and not knowing the path. You talk a lot about, I guess you didn't say the word yet, but fear. Fear can drive a lot of our behaviors and over and
Mhm.
out analyzing things. You mentioned that specifically for women. What have been your biggest fears along the way? How did you overcome those?
Um, Gosh, I am somebody who doesn't feel like she's totally solved all of her fears. The single mom thing really kind of affected me in a, fierce mama bear type of a way. The fear of failing him, like not taking these bets and running after my dreams. Is that the wrong thing to have done? And the way that I kind of mindset shift or mindset ninja, that is I have faith that I've had a great corporate career and I have enough contacts in corporate America that if it hits the fan, I can make probably 5 phone calls and find a sales job within the week if necessary. Right. So, what is that actual worst case scenario? And how can I mitigate that risk around the actual worst case scenario? It's a stoic philosophy type thing. It applies to everything that I do.
Yeah, a lot of times our risk is going back to what we did previously, right? So
Mhm.
couldn't agree more on that. Now, so as you had these different fears and stuff, who you mentioned some different people, but who were mentors or people that have really helped
Mhm.
you either get over your fears or just get to the next step? Like who have been some influential people, whether that's directly or, you know, by association, yeah, whatever it may be. Who has influenced kind of your path in a lot of ways?
Sure. I adore Sharon Lechter, co-author of Rich Dad Poor Dad. She
Yeah.
also wrote Think and Grow Rich for Women. And I've had the honor, privilege of growing a friendship with her over the last few years, playing in this women's investor sandbox. Um, I also, my partner in GoBundance, Kelly Resendez, is
Okay.
an incredible abundance mindset uh, resource for me. So she has helped me identify where I'm still kind of dealing in scarcity, the fear of running out. Like there's always so much opportunity coming my way. And if I, look outward instead of inward and paying attention to the lack, then I will always see more abundance in front of me.
And I think just to go back to like you said, I don't know what the words you were used, but like a work in process, or you talked about
Mhm.
fear and still having fears. We talk a lot on the podcast or other places about overcoming those things, and maybe that seems like the people that we're talking to, you, me, whomever, just can do that easily and that's a piece of cake. That's not true. That's I think anyone that says they still don't have fears and they don't overthink things or out analyze things and worry about what may go wrong, that's probably not the case. So if you're having those thoughts, it's okay. I think being aware of what it is, and as you said, go through what's the worst case scenario, how might I mitigate it, is really the way to think about it. Those fears. The thought process of the fears might end up protecting you actually in making the right decision. Just be aware of what it is and think it through.
Mm-hmm. I don't think fear ends. Like
Right.
I think that anyone who has ever done anything great did it scared. Like I think I always say to the sweet little boy 8-year-old, I wonder when he's a grown up all of the sound bites that he's gonna quote back to me. But here's one I like. That courage wouldn't exist unless you were scared. Like you don't get a chance to practice being brave or courageous unless you were scared.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I love the word courage. It's one of my favorite words because it's just even, I mean, we can talk about your son's 7 or 8.
8.
I read 7, so
Yeah.
8
Yeah.
just probably just turned 8. But I think with kids, if we talk about that maybe a little bit, and like we have core values. One of them is courage, try new things. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's such an important, like someone else that was on the podcast, a buddy of mine talked about the grit muscle and building that as well. So
Mm-hmm.
tell me, how are you trying to teach that to your son?
And I get to be bonus mom now to 2 other kids, a 14-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy, which has been absolutely tremendous blessing. We play a lot of sports in our house. My fiance is a high school football coach. I played volleyball forever. I'm a volleyball coach. I get to be coach to the 14-year-old girl Ava. I mean, the chance to show up and think through the brain stuff. Like yes, it matters that your elbow was high, but it matters more that when that thing went wrong, that you thought about the next ball instead of dwelling on the thing that just went wrong.
Yeah.
That is a big piece of what matters in our family.
I think the events that happen with sports and youth sports are, first of all, I think youth sports can be overdone and there can be a lot of issues with it. However, if when you like, there's just so many real life examples and stories that you can teach through sports when there's
Mm-hmm.
failure, teamwork, communication. Like there's just so many grit. There's just so
Mm-hmm.
many things that you can learn. And really our focus on sports with our kids is focus on the process, not the result.
Yeah.
And just use different scenarios and situations as an opportunity to learn.
We always say attitude and effort. You control what you can control. You don't control the outcome. You do control your attitude. You do control your effort.
Yep.
That is all that matters to us.
Yep. We say, uh, listen, have fun, give a lot of effort. I mean, it's really those three things. So, and we talk about attitude, so we're very aligned on that.
Yeah.
Um, you've had a lot of success over the years and a lot of obstacles and aha moments and mindset shifts. But if you really step back and reflect,
Mm-hmm.
how does what you have been able to do and you're doing right now, how does it make you feel?
Like I'm just getting started. Like I wish I would have found this bravery muscle much sooner. But the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The chance to hopefully get a hold of a 20 something who's too nervous to take the plunge of oh, this risk is too big and I need to play it safe and go to medical school, or I need to play it safe and get this master's degree, or whatever that thing is that is playing it safe, and it, but your core, your gut is telling you that you have something else, that you're made for more than whatever safe thing you're trying to do. The chance to breathe life, to be courageous to that person, that's the thing that matters most to me right now. And that feels really powerful.
That's awesome. And I think like we talked about fear and risk, another thing earlier, and I like just keep stretching yourself, keep testing yourself, because you don't, if you have this big grand vision of what you want to do and you say it, but begin with the end in mind, 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
if you're 20 or 30 and you begin with the end in mind, you're probably really only thinking about 30 or 40, and you have no idea the path that you can blaze if you just get started and take risks that are out of your comfort zone. Hopefully don't
Mm-hmm.
bury you. We're not saying that, but take risks that are out of your comfort zone, because how much,
Mm-hmm.
like where you're going to get the confidence you're going to gain and like what you're going to learn through that process is
Hmm.
so valuable that you will keep changing the end goal, I think, or a lot of
Hmm.
times unless you really, really think about the big ones, but just going and getting started and not playing it safe and breathing life, as you
Hmm.
say, is great advice to a younger person.
It's who you're becoming in the process. It's you hear it's so many colloquialisms or, you know, silly because they're said so much, but it's so true that I would not have ever asked for many of the things that happened to me or occurred in my life, but I wouldn't trade them for the world now
Yeah,
because they made me the person I'm proud to be.
right. And when you're putting yourself in situations that are challenging, you're going to have quote bad things that happen that now, as you're looking
Hmm.
back, you don't regret those.
Absolutely.
What has been your key factor to success?
That insatiable curiosity that I talked about, and to believe that I can't. Another thing in the coaching youth volleyball is if a girl tells me, "Oh no, I can't do that." Okay, you owe me 10 tuck jumps. Don't you ever tell me you can't do something. Yet. If you're going to say I can't do that, say yet, because you will always be able to figure out a way to do something if it matters enough to you.
The words I can't are just horrible words in the English language.
Hmm.
By the
I
way,
Yeah.
big volleyball family. We are in the middle of club volleyball season. Our daughter is
Ah,
13, and my wife coaches the club team. She's going to be coaching the eighth grade team next year. So we are like living it. And it's a lot of fun, honestly. So
I'm probably going to see you at nationals one of these years.
uh we'll see. That's optimistic, but they do a good job and it's fun to watch. What do
Yeah.
you think your key factors to success moving forward will be?
Mm.
And if it's the same, what would a second one be?
You know, I'm looking at people ahead of me and I'm learning from them. So, for example, uh, the call that GoBundance does that looks at people who make it to a 10 million or 100 million or way bigger net worth than I've got right now, learning from them and a pattern that I've seen, following the patterns of people ahead of me. Well, the fastest way to get to a millionaire status is real estate. It seems to me that the fastest way to get to 10 million or 100 million is with some sort of big business and then treating real estate like you're taking chips off the table. So
Yep.
the next right step for me is I just acquired a car wash. It's a real estate heavy business,
Yeah.
but it's headed in the right direction. And I bought cash flow for much cheaper than I buy cash flow in real estate. So business stuff failing forward and being a beginner there is it has been really fun.
And I think what's interesting about real estate and business and maybe the misnomer is people have the percent like real estate, passive income, financial freedom, like people associate that. And then but business they don't a lot of times. In my
Hmm.
opinion, it's not the business you're in, it's how you set up the business, how you structure it, the systems, the team members. There are business owners that are not involved in their business. You can
Hmm.
absolutely make businesses be passive income. And I agree that a business, if run well, can
Yeah.
definitely be higher cash flow than real estate.
Absolutely. The math on it is I bought the car wash at 3x EBITDA, so
Yeah,
3x the cash flow. If I buy multifamily at a 4 cap, its value equals NOI over
right.
cap. I'm paying $25 for that
Correct.
dollar of cash
Yeah.
flow,
So
right?
yeah, 25 to 1 EBITDA versus 3 to 1 EBITDA, drastic
Exactly.
difference. And the car wash, as you said, had real estate, it's real estate backed. It's not all the value of the car wash, but it's valued as a business, but it's real estate backed too. So
Hmm.
um couple closing questions here, but so most impactful business or real estate book.
The one that's on the top of my mind, because we called to it a couple times, The Psychology of Money,
Yeah, it's a great book.
uh, has been really impactful in a lot of ways for me and for a lot of people I know.
Has it changed your has it shifted your relationship with money and how you think about money?
Um, it's shifted my relationship with risk and
Okay.
that need to be reasonable enough.
Yep.
End of the day, you make more if you take a calculated risk, and calculating that risk is something that matters more to me now than it did before the book.
Fantastic. What about most impactful personal development books? So non-real estate or non-business.
Hmm. I do a lot of reading. Well, listening. I'm dyslexic. Um, I, you know, Think and Grow Rich for Women. You've read the Think and Grow Rich. Many of your listeners probably have read Think and Grow Rich. If you happen to be female, pick up Think and Grow Rich for Women. It's more, insightful life stuff, not just money, even though it does talk about money, but it's updated. So instead of the examples of being from a 1920s, rich white guy, it's from a female perspective. This idea of I crave impact more than I crave power. And sometimes masculine energy craves power over impact,
My suspicion is there's probably just a lot more depth to it for women than there is for men because we sometimes don't have the depth. So I appreciate that. The Psychology of Money, by the way, by Morgan Housel was fantastic, and Think and Grow Rich, and check out Think and Grow Rich for Women. If you're a female listener, Mandy, I really appreciate this. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
Best place to find me and connect on all of my socials is mandymcallister.com.
Awesome. And there they can find the free tool for the different levels of security and how to get there.
Absolutely. mandymcallister.com/calculator. We'll get you that link.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. For all of our listeners, we really appreciate you listening in. If you like the episode, please share it with someone, because it not for us, but it can have an impact on someone else. If it starts them on this self-development journey, Mandy can certainly have an impact, whatever it might be. Follow Mandy, get the tool. We really appreciate it. For the Mueller Real Estate and Business Podcast, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Mueller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Mueller Real Estate, visit our website at www.muellerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.